In my previous life, I died, and the people who led me to that ending may have been the ones I trusted the most. After being reborn, all I wanted was to stay away from everyone. But an assassination attempt destroyed all of my plans. The Emperor wants to protect me. Qin Fang wants to keep me by his side. Hua Wuze wants to take me away. And Fu Tian has never left my side for even a moment. The harder I try to change my fate, the more I find myself being pulled back into the past. Even in my dreams, someone keeps saying that they will never let me leave. The most terrifying thing is not that someone wants to harm me, it is that I no longer know who I can trust. My name is Yan Chao, and people once called me the greatest heartbreaker in the world. I used to believe that I could keep every relationship under my control. Prince Regent Qin Fang wanted to keep me by his side for the rest of his life. Fu Tian, my loyal guard, was willing to sacrifice everything for me. Emperor Ding Xiai considered me more important than the affairs of the empire itself. Even Hua Wuze, the leader of the martial alliance, had once bowed his head for me. I never thought of myself as someone who changed his feelings easily. It is just that my heart had somehow been divided into far too many pieces. During the day, I spent my time moving between all of them. At night, I could not find a moment of peace, even in my dreams. I once believed that I could continue living that way forever. Until the day everything fell apart. They killed me. It was only in my final moments that I realized one thing. If I ever got a second chance, I would stay as far away from them as possible. But when I opened my eyes again, I was still alive. I had returned to the past, to the moment before every tragedy had begun. Before I could even celebrate, I discovered a terrifying truth. Today was the infamous one day, 4 lovers disaster. At noon, I was supposed to meet the emperor. In the afternoon, I was scheduled to see the Prince Regent. In the evening I had an appointment with Hua Wuze. And late at night, it would be Fu Tian's turn. I was completely stunned. Did heaven really bring me back just to throw me into this nightmare all over again? No. This time I have to change my fate. The first thing I need to do is run away. I immediately wrote letters to all 4 of them, claiming that I was returning to my ancestral home to visit my uncle. In my memory, my uncle was the only person who could help me. As long as I could survive today, I would have a chance to uncover who killed me in my previous life. It was not until the carriage had left the capital that I finally let out a sigh of relief. But in the very next moment, the carriage suddenly came to a halt. I was thrown violently to the ground. Then, a familiar voice echoed beside my ear.
Chao.
What are you doing here? I looked up and saw the person I feared meeting the most, Qin Fang. The moment I saw Qin Fang, memories from my previous life came flooding back. He was the first person to discover that I had been involved with several people at the same time. He was also the one who locked me inside the Prince Regent's manor and taught me what true despair felt like. I still remember the look in his eyes that day. It was as if he were passing judgment on all of my sins. But now, he stood before me, smiling as though nothing had ever happened. Chao, I have finally found you. Half of my heart turned cold instantly. I had run so far away, so how had he still managed to find me? But I quickly forced myself to calm down. In this life, Qin Fang and I were nothing more than allies bound by mutual interests. As long as the Yan family still held military power, he would not act against me so easily. I claimed that I was here to visit my uncle. To my surprise, Qin Fang was also on his way to see my uncle. He said that the situation on the northwestern border had changed. That had never happened in my previous life. For the first time, I realized that the future had already begun to change. To keep my distance from Qin Fang, I volunteered to help persuade my uncle. After all, my uncle was my greatest source of support right now. But the moment I stepped into the ancestral estate, I began to sense that something was wrong. My father had always said that my uncle had been seriously injured and had spent years recovering. Then why was someone practicing martial arts in the courtyard? Before I could think any further, I rushed forward and shouted, "Uncle!" The man turned around, and I froze on the spot. The person standing before me was not an elderly man with white hair. He was a young man with a cold and commanding presence. I had even enthusiastically offered to give him a massage for his back pain. It was not until the old servant beside him addressed him as master that I realized just how foolish I had been. Before I could recover from the shock, my uncle directly rejected Qin Fang's request. Qin Fang left, but the look he gave me before he departed sent a chill down my spine, because I knew that he had already begun to suspect why the Yan Chao of today was completely different from the one he had known before. Only after Qin Fang left did I finally let out a sigh of relief. But when I stepped into my uncle's study, something else left me completely stunned. Books. Books were everywhere. Just looking at them was enough to make me feel that my life was far too short. My uncle looked at me and directly asked why I had come here. I had no choice but to tell a half-truth. I said that I had offended both Qin Fang and the emperor. I wanted to hide from them for a while, but my uncle was not someone who could be fooled so easily. He asked why I had not told my father. That question left me speechless, because in my previous life, I had also believed that everything was just a misunderstanding. Until the day I died, Qin Fang believed that I had betrayed him. Hua Wuze believed that I had broken my promise to him. Ding Xiai believed that I had betrayed the empire. And Fu Tian wanted to eliminate everyone else and take me away. Every one of them had evidence, but none of them believed my explanation. Even now, I still do not know who switched those letters, and I still do not know who truly wanted me dead. That is why, this time, I absolutely cannot repeat the same mistakes. I pretended to be pitiful and begged my uncle to let me stay. Fortunately, he agreed. He even promised to teach me the art of mechanical devices. But when I looked at my uncle's face, I suddenly felt that something was strange. He was just too handsome. I quickly reminded myself not to think about unnecessary things. But on my very first day staying here, I realized that I had a new problem. My uncle said that he wanted to test my abilities. The next morning, I had just woken up when I heard a familiar voice calling out. I turned around and smiled as I called, "Uncle," but the person standing behind him made my entire body turn cold. "Fu Tian, why are you here too?" The moment I saw Fu Tian, I immediately remembered something. In my previous life, around this same time, my father discovered that Fu Tian and I had been meeting in private. As a result, Fu Tian was sent to the borderlands. But this time, everything had changed, and that made me even more uneasy. I tried suggesting that someone else train with me instead, but my uncle calmly replied with a single sentence. Fu Tian was the only person who truly understood my abilities and could spar with me without hurting me. I no longer had any excuse to refuse. The training session began. I charged forward with all my strength, but in the blink of an eye, Fu Tian had already closed the distance between us. He was so close that it brought back memories I never wanted to remember. Then, he suddenly let go. I lost my balance, and once again, Fu Tian was the one who pulled me back. We both fell to the ground together. He claimed that he had injured his leg, but I knew that Fu Tian was not that weak, so I decided to play along with him for once. I took the initiative and helped him back to his room to apply medicine. The moment the door closed, I immediately asked him about the letters from my previous life, but Fu Tian said that he had never received them. Then he looked at me with the exact same expression he had worn in my previous life. He asked me the one question I least wanted to hear. "Master, do you no longer need me?" I could only continue playing the role of the master he remembered. But just when I thought I had finally reassured him, my uncle's voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Yan Chao, what is going on in there?" My uncle appeared at the perfect moment and saved me from that awkward situation with Fu Tian. When I heard that he was going out to buy materials for his mechanical devices, I immediately decided to go with him. After all, staying by my uncle's side was much safer than staying with Fu Tian. But Fu Tian insisted on coming along as well. I could only find an excuse to send him off to do something else. Fortunately, he had always listened to me. At last, I had a chance to be alone with my uncle. I thought this would be the first step toward becoming closer to him. But throughout the entire journey, my uncle was colder than usual. That made me start to worry. Had he discovered something about me and Fu Tian? Or was he already thinking about sending me back home? Just then, my uncle was invited inside to inspect some newly arrived goods. I volunteered to stay outside and rest. And then, I felt killing intent. An arrow shot straight toward me. Everything happened too fast. By the time I reacted, the arrow had already pierced my back. It hurt, but another thought appeared in my mind. In my previous life, who was the one that truly wanted me dead? If the culprit had appeared this early, then perhaps this was my chance to uncover the truth. When my uncle rushed over, I immediately put on the weakest expression I could manage. I told him that I had tried to block the arrow for him. Just as I expected, my uncle immediately took me away from that place. Through the haze of pain and medicine, I heard someone call out to my uncle. That person said that someone had always been waiting for his return, but my uncle rejected them without hesitation. Just before I lost consciousness, I suddenly realized something. Perhaps the most mysterious person in this entire nightmare was never Qin Fang or Fu Tian, but my own uncle. I was awakened by the sounds of people chasing each other outside. My mind was still clouded by the medicine. Instinctively, I reached out for the person beside me, and then I touched someone else's body. I became fully awake in an instant. My uncle was still beside me. The wound on my back hurt so badly that I nearly burst into tears. But what frightened me even more was realizing that I was no longer wearing my clothes. My uncle calmly explained that I had developed a high fever last night. He had changed my clothes to prevent my condition from getting worse. Before I could even feel embarrassed, shouting erupted outside once again. Out of curiosity, I decided to go take a look. The moment I opened the door, someone suddenly fell right in front of me. Another person stepped directly onto his back. I immediately recognized that familiar face. Hua Wuze. He looked just as surprised to see me here. My heart tightened instantly. Yesterday I was attacked, and today I ran into Hua Wuze. There were too many coincidences for me not to be suspicious. I quickly pulled him aside to question him, but his answer was completely different from what I remembered from my previous life. Not only that, he already knew that I had been injured, and he was genuinely angry on my behalf. For the first time, I began to doubt myself. Perhaps Hua Wuze had not been the culprit in my previous life after all. But then, I heard another piece of news. 3 days from now he would participate in the autumn hunt. That had never happened in my previous life. Everything was changing faster than I had imagined. And when Hua Wuze stared at the marks on my body, I suddenly remembered something terrifying. If those marks were not left by the arrow, then the person who left them Was not that Fu Tian? After the assassination attempt, my father suddenly claimed poor health and refused to attend the autumn hunt, and the person sent in his place turned out to be me. What troubled me even more was that Fu Tian would be accompanying me. I knew better than anyone just how dangerous this hunting trip would be. Because in my previous life, all of them had been there. I had no choice but to ask my uncle for help. I wanted him to come with me, but my uncle refused. He said that as long as Fu Tian was by my side, I would not be in danger. I could only accept it reluctantly. But before I left, my uncle secretly prepared a gift for me. A small concealed weapon, powerful enough to save my life. I happily thanked him. I even deliberately teased him a little more. But the way my uncle looked at me at that moment made me feel that something was different. That night, I barely slept. If all four of them appeared together, would I end up repeating the tragedy of my previous life? Then, a crazy idea suddenly crossed my mind. If they had never gotten along in the first place, then why should not I let them fight among themselves? 3 days later, my injuries had almost completely healed. Before I departed, my uncle personally handed me the concealed weapon. I smiled and promised that I would return and repay his kindness many times over. But after I left, my uncle immediately began investigating the assassination attempt, and every clue seemed to point toward the imperial court. On the way to the hunting grounds, Fu Tian kept blaming himself. He said that if he had accompanied me that day, I would never have been injured. He even swore that he would find the person responsible. I simply told him that his only duty was to protect me. But then, Fu Tian asked a question that made me freeze. Master, why have you suddenly become closer to your uncle than to me? Before I could answer, a familiar voice spoke coldly from ahead. What exactly are you two doing? The moment I arrived at the hunting grounds, I ran into the person I feared seeing the most, Emperor Ding Tizai. He looked at me as if he had been waiting for a very long time. He said that when I failed to show up that day, he thought something had happened to me. I immediately realized something. The letter I had sent him had never reached him either. That meant someone had been secretly cutting off all of my connections with the people around me. But at the very least, this proved one thing. The person who wanted me dead in my previous life was not Ding Xiai. I quickly changed the subject to calm him down. And Ding Xiai was still the same as always. As long as I said a few gentle words, his anger disappeared immediately. He pulled me into his arms as if nothing had ever happened. Then, he took out a small gift. It was a jade fox carved with extraordinary craftsmanship. I could not help but admit it. Ding Xiai truly understood what I liked. He had even prepared a table full of my favorite foods and snacks. But what caught my attention was a small mechanical device among the tribute items. I thought, perhaps my uncle would like it. When I told him that I wanted to live a long life and witness an age of peace together with him, the look in Ding Xiai's eyes suddenly changed. He immediately pulled me toward his tent. At that very moment, Qin Fang and Hua Wuze also appeared. My heart sank instantly. 3 of them had already gathered. If Fu Tian showed up too, then the nightmare from my previous life would be completely recreated. And right at that moment, Fu Tian walked in carrying a bowl of medicine. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward me at the same time. And I had only one thought left. This time, I am definitely doomed. I thought the assassination attempt was already troublesome enough, but I had underestimated the true power of this nightmare. The 4 men standing in front of me started arguing over who should protect me. The emperor wanted to take me back to the palace. Qin Fang wanted to bring me to the Prince Regent's manor. Hua Wuze wanted me to stay at the Martial Alliance. As for me, I just wanted to live in peace for a few more days. But the more I listened to them, the more I realized a terrifying truth. The person who attacked me never intended to kill me. They only wanted to test the reactions of the people standing behind me. And that was far more terrifying than death itself. Hua Wuze said that I could stay at the Martial Alliance. He even mentioned the agate bracelet that I had lost long ago. Only then did I realize that, in this life, I had sought him out more often than I remembered. Qin Fang immediately looked displeased. I had no choice but to comfort one person while reassuring another. I even dragged Fu Tian into the conversation to redirect the conflict, but the more I explained, the worse the situation became. Each of them interpreted my words in a completely different way. When Qin Fang asked why the token he had given me was in Hua Wuze's possession, I nearly lost half my life from the shock. I had no choice but to use my father as a shield. I said that I had been learning martial arts so that I could protect my family in the future. Fortunately, Qin Fang believed me this time. But immediately afterward, the emperor asked why I had been meeting Hua Wuze so often. I continued lying. I said that everything I had done was simply to find medicine to improve his health. After a long battle of words, I finally managed to maintain a fragile balance among the 4 of them. I thought I had survived this disaster. Until I saw the person walking out of the hunting grounds, my second brother, and the legs that should never have been injured. Even as I looked at my second brother standing before me, I still could not believe it. The legs that had once destroyed his future had truly recovered, but his first reaction was not to show off his achievements. Instead, he asked me if I was hurt. I smiled and told him that I was fine. Then I tried to ask who had saved him, but my second brother only said that it was someone who had once owed him a favor. And he did not want me to ask any more questions. At that moment, news of the white deer spread throughout the hunting grounds. Everyone wanted to hunt it and earn great honor, but my second brother only asked whether I was hungry. He said that if I wanted it, he would hunt it for me. At that moment, memories of my previous life suddenly came back. I remembered how my second brother had once dreamed of becoming a soldier. I remembered how, at the age of 14, an accident had taken everything away from him. In this life, I did not want him to live with regrets anymore, so I begged him to get back on his horse. I wanted to see my second brother shine once again with my own eyes. In the end, he agreed. We rode together into the hunting forest. Along the way, I told him stories about my uncle. He listened quietly, as if my happiness was all that mattered to him. Then, the white deer appeared. I immediately urged my second brother to chase after it, but before leaving, he still stuffed my hands with all kinds of protective items. Only after he had gone did I realize that the forest around me had become terrifyingly silent. My eyelids gradually grew heavier. In my dream, I once again witnessed the moment of my death in my previous life. Someone said they would protect me, but I could not see their face clearly. When I suddenly woke up, an arrow was already cutting through the air toward me. I looked up and saw my second brother holding a drawn bow. In my dazed state, I heard someone calling my name. It was my uncle, but whenever I tried to see him clearly, everything dissolved into darkness. Frustrated, I thought that from beginning to end, no one had ever been willing to tell me the truth. I was not that foolish. Yet a cold laugh suddenly echoed through the dark forest. Not foolish. I no longer had the strength to argue. I only felt someone pull the blanket tightly around me before lifting me into their arms. Shivering from the cold, I instinctively leaned toward that warmth. But at that very moment, another voice cut through the night. Qin Fang had arrived. There were no swords drawn between the two men, yet the killing intent was more terrifying than any battlefield. Qin Fang said that he had discovered clues about the attempt on my life. And every clue pointed toward the Zhongsun family, but my uncle chose to step back. He entrusted my protection to Qin Fang. After my uncle left, it felt as though the entire world contained only Qin Fang and me. He looked at me for a very long time. Then he quietly asked whether I would leave in fear if I ever saw who he truly was. In his eyes, I saw something even more terrifying than ambition. It was the fear of being abandoned, and just as he seemed determined to keep me by his side at any cost. Fu Tian walked in. Who do you think was the person who appeared in Yan Chao's dream? Among the people surrounding Yan Chao, who is truly trying to protect him? And who might be hiding something? If you were Yan Chao after being reborn, who would you choose to trust? Qin Fang, Emperor Ding Qi, Hua Wuze, or Fu Tian? And most importantly, is Yan Chao escaping his old fate, or is he slowly walking back toward the same tragedy that destroyed his previous life?